almost 6 months since my sweet Peyton has passed from this earth. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about grief and sort of this path that I've been navigating over the last almost 6 months now, especially in light of the fact that it's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's also Pet Cancer Awareness Month. And so I thought I'd tell you a little bit about mine and Peyton's story, as well as just the fact that grief is really, truly, and I know I've said this before, it is not linear in any capacity. And you may have known, you may have seen me post before, but the past 20 months, my mom and her dog have actually been living with me. We moved her down from Illinois, September of 2021. And she wanted to be closer to my sister and I, and just really didn't have any reason to stay up in Illinois. And so due to the change in the market in Austin and some just things personally that were going on, it's taken us 20 months to find the right opportunity for my mom so that she can move into her own space with her dog. And so in the midst of that 20 months, obviously, Peyton passed away. It was November 30th last year. And it's been interesting navigating that. And so while the grief obviously was so intense at the beginning, was incredible. He ended up, we found out he had splenic cancer sort of overnight. It all happened within about 24 hours, completely unexpected. He was healthy. He was vibrant. I took him for a walk that morning, and by dinner time, he was barely able to walk down the stairs. He wasn't eating and he wasn't able to go to the bathroom. And so I called my vet and I set him an appointment, and she's like, we can get him in at 4 tomorrow. We just thought it was like a urinary tract infection or something. Because again, there was no warning of this coming on. He had just had a physical in July, aside from a few things, just because he was getting older. He was 11 years old. Nothing really showed up that caused any kind of alarm. And so fast forward going to the doctor and her taking an x-ray. His regular vet took an x-ray, and it was clear. It was clear before we even took an ultrasound that something was going on in his little body. And so you could see the metastasis of the cancer that had spread through his body. Well, we found out through a preliminary ultrasound when he went to the emergency hospital that he had had a tumor in his spleen that ruptured, and it was starting to metastasize in his little body. And pretty much a decision. I'm going to get really emotional because today is just a day. I don't know why. I do know why, because grief is, again, it's not linear. It's not something that makes sense. There is no rhyme or reason to it. It shows up when it shows up, and you're given the gift of what it's trying to present and what it's asking you to move through, to feel. And so needless to say, I needed to make a decision in a very short period of time to let Peyton go. And so, they had told me that his chances of making it through the night were very slim. You could see it actually in his belly. His belly had kind of had that descended like inflammation, and you could see it. Not to mention he hadn't eaten or gone to the bathroom in over 24 hours. They said that if he were to make it through the night so that we could do a full on ultrasound and take a look at everything, that he likely would need multiple blood transfusions in the process. He was extremely dehydrated. His blood count was extremely low and dropping. And I just remember that I had promised him that I would never let him pass alone. And so made the decision, hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And it's been a journey over the last 6 months. Now, we just moved my mom this past weekend. Like I said, it's been 20 months. And her dog, Ammo, sweet, sweet baby boy, who actually, when we brought Ammo home for my mom, I had been visiting in Illinois, and Peyton happened to be with me because Peyton was my little road warrior. And when I used to do work up in Wisconsin, when I go back to Milwaukee and do a lot of my corporate work, with my clients, we would road trip. Peyton and I would take a 15-hour road trip up to my mom's, and we would stay with my mom for a few days. And then I would leave Peyton with her so that I could go do my work. And then I would come down and we'd spend a couple more days, and then we'd road trip back to Austin. And so my mom was ready for a new dog. And I remember when we got Ammo, he actually came to her home, and Peyton was there. So he's known Peyton his whole time being with my mom. And so then when they came down and moved in, with me 20 months ago, they've sort of built this bond together, right? And Ammo's been like a second dog for me in the house. And I will say, I know originally when Peyton passed, my mom was a little nervous about how I was going to do coming home with her dog being here. And I have to say, there was an incredible blessing in the fact that it's taken this long to find my mom's home, because I'm not sure, especially as I'm feeling this stuff now. It's a whole new layer of things coming through now that I've got my house back and it's just me right now. There was something really profound about coming home and having dog energy in the house. And I will say, moving forward, when the time is right for me to adopt, I probably will adopt too at the same time, because there is something to be said about being able to come home after that kind of heartache, that kind of decision, and still have dog energy in the house. And so Ammo has been my sidekick since November, since Peyton's left. Ammo, short for ammunition. He's a little bullet. He's a Jack Russell Terrier. He's got a lot of energy, very different demeanor than Peyton. For those of you that ever had a chance to meet Peyton, Peyton was a very quiet, calm demeanor. He was very kind of even energy. Just he was a healer at the core. And Ammo is very different. He's got a lot of happy, excitable, just energizing energy about him. And so it was always interesting to see them interact together. Usually they did very well. Every once in a while, Peyton would be like, enough. And so Ammo's been sort of that sidekick, right? He's been that healing, deep healing space for me. He's been a rock. And it's been interesting because I've known, while I've been really excited because it's been time. I mean, my mom and I've put our life kind of on hold and things have been in hiatus. And it's been wonderful. I mean, honestly, I could do a whole nother video on that, and I will, because especially as we talk about mental health, there's so much mental health illness and issues that are in my family, and some of them particularly with my mom, and what I experienced growing up with her being clinically depressed. My sister has been diagnosed as bipolar. My dad was clinically narcissistic, as well as hypertensive. And then just extensions of my family. There was a lot of alcoholism. There was a lot of clinical depression, manic depression, bipolarness. And so there's just a lot of that growing up that, wasn't quite sure how it was going to work with my mom and I living together. Initially, it was supposed to be, a couple months, and it turned into being 20. Now, while some of that got to be frustrating at times for both of us, I mean, we're both used to living alone. We have our own way of doing things. We are wired very differently. We did really well. And one of the gifts that's come out of that is there's been this really incredible healing space. And like I said, I'm going to talk about that more specifically in another episode, but there has been this opportunity to heal a lot of generational trauma, heal a lot of things that, I experienced growing up, especially being the oldest, and being a caretaker for much of my life. And then, to use Terry Cole's phrase from Boundary Boss, coming to terms with my own tendencies to be a high functioning codependent, and how I've stepped into that role sometimes when probably I didn't need to, or didn't know how to ask for help when I was hurting, or when I needed to grieve, or when, it got to be too much. I sort of just took it on, kept quiet, and had this shame or the stigma around talking about what I was experiencing, as all this mental health illness and issues were going on around me. And so I haven't fully processed that. To be said, is I'm not always good at processing things through. I get to a point where sometimes I want to be like, okay, I'm done with it and move on. And one of the promises I made to Peyton and to myself when this was going on in November was that I wanted to feel all of it. I'm not good sometimes with feeling all of it. I'm a type A plus personality. I like to get shit done. I don't always want to make the time for the healing side of things. I just want to move through it. I just want to be done. And I was really clear that I didn't want to do this. I didn't feel like that was the way to honor Peyton or my life with him or the journey with him. And so it helped. It helped having my mom and her dog be around. There was definitely a comfort in not having the fullness of experiencing him not being here. And so just in this past week, though, I am going through another level of grief. And it's hitting me really deeply as I acknowledge the reality that Peyton is gone. There's no little tippy tap of the paws through the house. There's no other dog energy I can lean on. I see posts pop up. I see reels that I've put together, and it takes me but a second, and the wave of tears come crashing down again. And there's a sweetness to all of it. And so you might be saying, why am I sharing all of this? Because I think it's important that we talk about our emotions, we talk about feelings, we talk about grief, we talk about anything that wants to move through, because I know there are so many people that are wired like I am, where it's, I want to punch it in the face, I want to shove it down, I want to just move past it. I don't have time to grieve. I'm over grieving. There has been days, trust me, even in the past 6 months, that I've been like, I'm over it. I'm over this. I don't want to grieve anymore. And then something happens. And I've been experiencing a lot of firsts. A couple weeks before my mom moved, we went to one of my favorite Mexican restaurants here in Austin. First time. I haven't been there in a while. And it was the first time I went without Peyton. It was our space. We would go on the patio. Even before my mom moved in, I would take work sometimes, and he and I would go on the patio, and I'd have lunch, and we'd sit and we'd people watch. And so like, there's still a lot of firsts. There's still a lot of things I'm experiencing as I'm learning how to do life without him. And I say that because he was such an integral part of my life. He was part of everything. For the past decade, he was woven into every fabric of my life. He was part of my business. My clients had relationships with him. He went on dates with me. We'd go sit on a patio or take a hike, and Peyton came with me because it was important. He road traveled with me, whether it would be vacation with a girlfriend of mine, a friend of mine, to go to Galveston. When I said, okay, let me find someone to watch Peyton, she said, I know you well enough. I already got us an Airbnb that takes dogs. So, I mean, he was just a part of everything, whether I went to Dallas or Houston or Galveston, or whether I went back up to Illinois to do work in Wisconsin or just to see my mom. Peyton was part of everything. He was integrated in such a deep way. And as I'm now navigating sort of this reset, where I have my house back, and I have the stillness that is so deeply important to me. Many of you know I do a lot of work in human design, and that 2 line of mine, that unconscious 2 line, which is a hermit, really likes my cave. I also, cave is one of my superpowers. It's how I manifest. As you can see, I've got my cave. I'm all tucked in, even as I'm doing this podcast right now. And so to be able to reset and to be able to create the energy in my cave, in my shell that I like, is deeply restoring for me. And as I'm learning to navigate through that new restoration, that reset that's going on right now with my mom and Ammo moving into their own house, and so excited. I mean, this has been a long time coming, and it's so great. And she's about 30 minutes away, and so we still can have this dynamic and this energy. And she's still right here with me and my sister. But to have that space back where I get to be in the energy of my new reality, is hitting in a whole different way. And so there's been many things that sort of have come to play throughout this. One is the idea that, and somebody had said this to me, and I'm really feeling the magnitude of these words in a whole different way. And it's the fact that the grief, the magnitude of the grief, the intensity of the grief doesn't go away. The space in between the waves of grief is what changes. Because I will say that I've had moments, and it's actually been This is my first day really coming back after moving my mom and giving myself a couple days to just process. I didn't even realize over the last 20 months, and some of it's just been, just natural frustrations or just what I've been carrying that maybe I didn't need to carry, or maybe I did. Just a lot of the energy. I didn't even know how much I had stored in my body until I gave myself some space this past couple days to process. And so as we talk about mental health awareness this month, I think it's important to know what we tend to build up in our own bodies when it comes to how we present ourselves and how we take care of others. And so I know many of you that are in my listening audience, I know a lot of you are also type A personalities. You are people that have been caretakers in different capacities, whether it's in your job, whether it's in your home, whether it's with your immediate or extended family, whether it's in your community. There's a load or a burden that you have oftentimes picked up. Sometimes because you have those leadership skills that just says something needs to change, or someone's got to take this and move this forward. And other times you've picked it up because, again, to use Terry Cole's expression, you have some of that high functioning codependency that says, I'm just going to take care of it because no one else can. And there's some things and some stigma in that's the opportunity to be unwound. Either way, we tend to carry a lot, and we do not give ourselves enough space, enough grace, enough permission to just allow ourselves to process all of what's built up. And so for me, I don't think I even knew how much was being stored in my body until I started to release some this week. And so things are hitting a little bit harder. Things are hitting a little bit more unexpectedly. Monday, I had probably 3 times that I had a complete breakdown, like just sobbing mess of just release. It was just such a cathartic cleanse. And I'm a really big fan, and it took me a long time. Let me be really clear. It took me a really long time to get comfortable with what I call cathartic cleansing. In fact, I even work with and encourage my one-on-one clients to develop practices where they are cathartic cleansing regularly. I think about all of the different ways we create self-help for ourselves. We create self-love. We create ways to fill our cups spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, and energetically. Oftentimes we don't give ourselves permission to really cleanse. I know, and just to share a little story about this, back in my corporate days, I hated showing emotion. I was really, and I'm an emotional. I mean, first of all, I'm a Cancer by my sun sign and my sun rising. I'm a Cancer. I'm a 6/2. I have a defined solar plexus. I'm an emotional creature by nature, very emotional. Like I can't watch commercials and movies without crying. There's a running joke in my family when I say, oh my God, that movie was so good, I cried. My mom and my sister would be like, really? What movie haven't you cried at? I'm a crier. I'm an emotional being. And for the longest time, I had such shame around being too emotional. In fact, people would tell me all the time, you're too passionate, you're too emotional, what I didn't realize is that's actually part of my superpower. I deeply empathetically connect into life. I feel everything. Now, it's not to say that I don't need energetic boundaries. I don't need to know what emotions are mine. I don't need to know when and how to manage my emotions. There's an emotional intelligence that's needed and required when we're talking about being an emotional being. But I also learned how to discern what was being overly emotional versus what was me being passionate. And there is a really interesting dynamic we have in our culture, especially for women, that if we are too passionate, which I hate that phrase to begin with, people immediately think we're being emotional. And I want to be clear that passion is what drives our life force, especially if you're an emotional authority like I am. Passion is what drives me. Passion is how I connect to others. Passion is my freaking superpower. And so when I keep trying to shame that, or I put a stigma around, I'm just being emotional, and I dismiss it, I'm dismissing the very life force that moves me into the powerful leadership that I get to stand in, and how I get to inspire and influence and impact others. And so I say that because, first of all, we need to stop talking about passion and emotion like they're the same thing. And we need to let go of the stigma that emotions are bad. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this today is because as I am finally learning how to fully give myself permission to feel all of it, it has been a journey. It's been a process, because back in my corporate days, 20 years in corporate, I had such shame when anytime the tears would come, whether I would get really angry or whether something would really move me. I look at some of the work that I did in my career, and it was meaningful, and I would get very intense. And I hated that. My lip would quiver, my eyes would water, and I would feel such shame. And then I was getting emotional, and oftentimes would be like, stop being the woman, stop being the girl, right? Because in many of my corporate endeavors, even my first job out of college in my sales training class, it was me and 25 guys. I was it. I was a female mechanical engineering with not a lot of people that looked like me around me in my career until later on. And so I didn't have a lot of strong female influences from a leadership perspective that taught me how to own it, because most of them, it was either cover your ass, only one of us can climb. It was very catty. It was just a very interesting dynamic, because we were all trying to protect this opportunity and this space where maybe we were emotional. It wasn't until I left corporate that it started to make sense, especially when I had multiple rock bottoms. And again, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that. I mean, one of my rock bottoms literally put me in the hospital. I thought I was having a heart attack, and it turned out I was just building all of this in my body, that it manifested a whole mass of shit that got stored up in my body. And that's what happens, right? When we don't allow ourselves that cathartic cleanse, there's a buildup. We store it in our body, and it has to go somewhere. One of the reasons we have the capacity to cry is because it's a release. It's like a valve that you can switch open and allow yourself to cleanse out the buildup of that energy, of sometimes toxic energy, sometimes intense energy, sometimes just grief or love or whatever it is. I can cry when I'm overflowing with love as much as when I'm overflowing with grief, because again, grief is sort of that demonstration of love that didn't get to be expressed, right? So if that's the case, there's a valve that we get to, so that we take the pressure off. Like, there is such a buildup of emotions that most of us are storing in our body, that if we're not releasing that, what happens is one of two things. We either implode, which causes us havoc on our nervous systems. It stores it in our body, that it creates cancers and illness and disease, mental health oftentimes being affected by that, or we explode and we project it out in a really unhealthy, irresponsible way that pulls us out of our leadership, and we just puke it on other people. And so I say that because one of the things that I've learned through, a very long journey of my own healing, especially over the last 10 years, ironically enough, Peyton's passing is perfectly timed with a 10-year anniversary of my business. I turned 50 this year, so I'm moving into the third phase of my human design. There's a lot of really aligned synchronicity to some of what's been showing up. So anyway, well, I can remember going back to one of my corporate environments that I used to work for once I stepped away and I started doing this work. And I got asked to come back to do a training workshop for some up and coming leaders. That was a group of women that were interns and new reps within the business. And one of the women had asked me, she said, I don't know what to do, because I go out and I meet with some of these clients, and mind you, it was in the financial services industry. And she's like, a lot of the guys in the office make fun of me because I cry when I meet with my clients. And I said, huh. And you could just see, you could feel the shame she was experiencing. And I know, I've been there. I thought something was wrong with me, because I would be so emotional. I would get connected. I can remember when I used to work in school districts early on in my days at Johnson Controls, and I would have kids run down the hall and hug me, or I would have business managers hug me because of the work that we were doing. And it would touch my heart. Yet I felt such shame because I would get so emotionally connected to that. And it kills me, because, we live by this adage of it's business, it shouldn't be personal. Oh my God, can we fucking stop with that nonsense? It's business, it has to be personal. Business is a direct result of people engaging and interacting with other people. Why are we not more personal in our business? And so when she had said that to me, something just clicked. And I looked at her and I go, do you think there's value in the work that you're doing? She said, yes. I said, last I checked, I mean, financial services, right? You're protecting the living legacies of generations. You're protecting the assets of a family. If God forbid something happens to the parents, the kids are taken care of, right? There's this whole way that you're creating impact that's meaningful. You're saving lives. You're assisting people through the most horrific, traumatic things they might experience, and making the back end of that so seamless and helpful, and a way to nurture them through that grieving process. And as someone who's been grieving for the last 6 months, trust me, it is a process. How do you not get emotionally connected to that? And she looked at me and kind of said, I never thought about it that way. And I said, think about it. The work you're doing matters. The work you're doing matters, right? The work I'm doing matters. Why do we shame ourselves from a space that says, I care and I deeply connected with somebody in a heartfelt way? That says, I saw them, I feel them. I told her as we were having this conversation, and she sort of had that epiphany. I said, what if you were to go to the guys in your office and be like, what are you leaving on the table because you're not emotionally connecting to your clients? Instead of using it as a stigma to shame ourselves, what if we look at it as a way that measures the level of connectedness we're creating on a day-to-day basis? Since I left corporate, I made myself a promise. I said one of my biggest metrics for success, because it's been a lot of redefining both leadership and success since I've left corporate. And that's the work I do, right? That's the work I get to do with other people, is redefining the definition of leadership and what it looks like and how we show up in it, and the fact that it's a choice and it starts with you leading yourself, but also redefining the definition of success. It's not about some bullshit arbitrary climbing a corporate ladder and achieving accolades and accomplishments and getting more shit done. This is not what success is about. Success is, for most of us, and by the way, 70% of the population is some kind of generator, either manifestor or generator. It's about fulfillment. It's about satisfaction. It's about, if you're a manifestor, it's about peace, right? Even a projector who, yes, their signature success, it's a different kind of success. It's knowing that we're playing at our highest and best strengths. It's knowing that your life has meaning and purpose. We are so far off course of having a culture that buys into that metric. And so I decided my metric of success for me, moving into this role 10 years ago, was that I don't want one day to go by that something doesn't touch me in my heart. I used to say, if my eyes don't water at least one time throughout the day, the question I get to ask myself is, why did I get up? Where did I create impact? And sometimes that's just for me, right? Sometimes that's just that space to release, but something I want to feel like I connect to a tree, or connect to a person, or connect to my dog, or connect to myself. But I need to know that every day something touches my heart. Something, and anyone that's ever sat in one of my trainings, been at one of my VIP events, even my online space, knows that I can't train sometimes without getting the emotion coming to the surface, the passion for what I do. And I cry with my clients. It's not that I'm crying because things aren't here. There's a difference. I'm not crying because I'm just a crying mess. I'm crying because something moved me. I'm crying because there's a space where I feel so deeply connected, deeply moved, deeply touched, that it's an expression of that love. It's an expression of that passion. And so one of the things that I've learned to do, and I teach and work with my clients to do as well, is a practice of cathartic cleansing. We need to create more ways to turn the release valve on. And so I will actually, and it's amazing, especially when I work with really high level executive leaders, when I work with business owners, it takes quite a bit. to get people back into a space where, one, they're comfortable with cathartic cleansing, even the idea of it, and two, how to actually create a practice. I have sometimes when I can feel the buildup and I'm like, I need to cry. I need to release. I have some of my favorite go-to movies. I have some things that I know. I have songs that will trigger something. Right now, all I have to do is look at a picture or a reel of Peyton, and it just, especially right now with this next level of what I'm experiencing, and it's okay. I want us to let go of this idea that there's this either time frame or this like checklist or this like pathway that our emotions are supposed to follow. I want for a moment for you to imagine if you gave yourself a permission to be the emotional being that you are. And for those of you that maybe don't have a defined solar plexus and you feel like you're taking on everybody else's emotion, there's a great opportunity for you to discern what you're feeling versus what you're picking up as an empath from everybody else. And by the way, we are all empathic. We all are empaths on some level. It's human nature. It's nature in and of itself. Trees are empaths. Animals are empaths. Peyton was without a doubt one of the biggest empaths I've ever met. But nature in and of itself, we cannot coexist without each other. When we allow ourselves to feel into that, to be human in our leadership, to be human in our humanness, right? I just feel like we have so many fucking rules about how we're supposed to show up. And we're too busy following everybody else's version of whatever we think we're perceiving as success, or they got it figured out. Or let me just be really clear, even with all the shit you see on social media, most people aren't okay. Most people are not fully okay. And most of us have things we're grieving or we're processing or we're feeling. It's part of the human experience. It's one of the reasons why I gave myself permission to feel all of it with Peyton. I've had people that reached out, and God bless all of them. They all well-intentioned people who have given me tools, tips, strategies, things on how to process my grief. And I have such gratitude for all of that. And the journey of processing through grief, this grief is mine. And nothing and nobody gets to tell me how to do that. And there is no time frame around it. There is nothing that says, okay, well, I've grieved enough, even though that's the culture that we lived in, right? Okay, suck it up, Candy, that's enough. I can run into a neighbor that I haven't seen in 6 months that will ask, where's my sweet boy? And it will come crashing down on me all over again. I ran a couple weeks ago, a month ago, I guess now, one of my first VIP retreats back in my home. And it's the first live event I've run without Peyton. Peyton's been the mascot. Peyton's been part of it. He was a healer. He knew who needed him when we would do the deep work that we do. And so still processing all those firsts. And the thing is every one of those moments is valid, is valuable, is important. And like I said, the intensity of the grief itself, I don't think changes. The waves in between pass. And when we need to do, especially as we learn how to lead ourselves better, it first starts with coming back home to ourselves. It comes to a place to truly destroy all the noise and the bullshit, blow up the bullshit, destroy the noise, say yes to yourself, and come back to a space that says, what do I need? Not what am I seeing so-and-so do on social media? Not, oh my God, well, if they got it, I got to do it this way too. Stop. Actually, one of the best things you can do is shut social media off for a while and just be still and ask yourself the real questions. Ask yourself the questions that say, what do I need right now? I love Jenna Kutcher has a new book out that I've been reading that I have to say is really hitting some spots. And the title of it is, how are you doing really? So it says, how are you really? And it's the question of, most of the time, and I've noticed Adam Grant posted something yesterday when we talk about mental health. He's like, when someone asks how you are, it's never a one-word answer. It's never a fine. It's never a good. And by the way, there's a whole lot of 4-letter words I wish we would get rid of. Okay, fine, good, busy. All of that's just nonsense. It's not us connecting in any way. We have a culture that is so entrenched in commiserating and complaining together. So we complain and commiserate. We don't connect and communicate. And I want you to realize we're missing so much. We are missing the humanness in leadership. We are missing the humanness in being a human. And being a human says that we're emotional, we're messy, we don't have it all figured out, and it's fucking okay. I cannot stress how much. I don't care if you are kicking ass and you've got $1 million businesses. I don't care if you're leading, troops. I don't care if you're leading large organizations. You still don't have it all figured out. And if you were honest about it, if you were honest about the fact that it's messy, and that you don't know everything, and that you do have emotions that want to be expressed, and you give yourself space for that cathartic cleansing that's required for us to be leading at the levels that matter, the levels that let us create effective change, the levels that let us take the accountability and the personal responsibility for how we're showing up and how we serve. It starts with you leading yourself. It starts with you asking the question, how am I really doing? How am I today? What do I need today? What needs to be or wants to be expressed today? When's the last time I gave myself space to just be in the emotions that are moving, that are passing? And there's been a lot of density this year. And I think Brandy and I were talking about it on one of the former episodes, where we're back in this frenetic energy of, I got to get shit done. I'm so busy. I got to move. I got to hustle. And all that's doing is putting us right back in that space where we're storing all of that emotion in our body, where we're amplifying the stress that is compromising our nervous system, where we are neurologically breaking down our system, where our cells are going back into that PTSD trauma that the cells know so well. When we have a moment to take a breath and to let ourselves release and realize that we were not put on this earth to run the rat race, which is to be on 24/7 at the cost of our own mental well-being, our own emotional well-being, our own spiritual well-being, our own physical and energetic well-being. And we need to, more than ever, hit the pause button. And so, like I said, it's been a journey. It's been messy. It's been raw. It's been heartbreaking. It's been painful. I miss him so much. And it's been beautiful. And it's been something that I have so much gratitude for. I don't want to miss any aspect of what navigating through this grief is here to bring for me, what it's here to show me, and how I get to continue to honor that sweet baby boy, that sweet creature who was an act of God in and of itself, of how we met. I adopted him sight unseen through an organization called Dog Guardians, who rescues dogs from kill shelters. And it was a God thing. He was so supposed to be my baby boy. And I've had to work through some of my regrets, which also is a process. I promised he'd have his house back. We'd find my mom a house, he'd have his quiet. Didn't get that. I promise, and so I've got a space of forgiveness for myself too, to realize he had a beautiful life. He was a happy boy. He brought me so much joy. He taught me so many things. I'll be sharing some of those lessons as well. And I know, even though I'm still processing all of it, I did what I had to do for him. And I say that because it's only in that space. It's only in being able to feel it, to be able to process it, to be able to allow the tears to come and to fall freely, and to give ourselves space and grace for cathartic cleansing, that we can feel all of the love contained in that space. Because all of this is simply a measure of how deeply I loved him and he loved me. And they say, animals teach us unconditional love. And I am learning more and more every day to practice unconditional love for myself. And so my wish for you is that you offer the same for yourself, that you learn how to really start to say yes to yourself. Say yes to yourself in a way that is the deepest level of self-love, that it's not about what everybody else thinks. It's not about all the shoulding and the shitting that you're doing all over yourself or anyone else is imposing on you. It is about you getting quiet enough to listen to the voice that is your own internal GPS that can help you recalibrate to due north. And so I hope that you will allow yourself more space, so much more grace to practice feeling the fullness of your emotions, to feel all of the feelings, to let them move through your body with ease, to embrace the fucking suck, and to give yourself a practice of regular cathartic cleansing to release all of what keeps continuing to build up. So just know I love you. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for letting me share a little bit of my story with Peyton about Peyton. Again, this is Mental Health Awareness Month. I think it's important for us to look at all aspects of mental health. I'm going to be sharing a lot more of my journey through that space. It's also Pet Cancer Awareness Month. And so lots of animals I've seen, especially in light of, being dialed into this, things to make sure we can start paying attention to, looking for signs when they're there, and recognizing that there's more incidences around this than we think. I was surprised when I did research after Peyton. I wanted to look up, splenic cancer, and particularly labs and golden retrievers and dogs such as that have a higher propensity of getting splenic cancer. But I did not realize the level of incidents that were profound. And I think that's also something I want to lean into more, to explore healthier options, to make sure that it's not an effect of their food, their environment, other things. And so something to be mindful of. And so just wanting to bring that to your attention. Again, the ultimate objective is that you remember that you are your first priority, and that asking for help, sharing your story, being vulnerable, being open is a gift, and it is a practice of how you get to lead yourself first. So with that, this is Candy. Thank you so much for listening today, and I will catch up with you on the next episode of Aligned as Fuck podcast. Leave your comments, share your stories, make sure that you hit the subscribe button if you want to catch all these episodes. And as always, thank you for being part of my community, for being part of my world.